Oh my god, was this recorded? Hello everyone, Mr. Cubal here, and actually we need to talk about this ball, the Cubal. Cubal physics, what does it mean? What is spin and how does it work in pool games? There are so many questions and I feel that this is a great moment to explain you how Cubal physics works. First of all, to better understand all informations, we need to talk about basics. If we are hitting the Cubal, then we are using spin or English. But wait a second, spin or English? English? Just like language?
Johnny English.
If we talk about spin, we mean the situation where we are hitting the Cubal in different points. This means that when we hit the Cubal at its top point, we are giving topspin and then the Cubal follows the object ball. But if we hit the Cubal at its lower point, we are giving it backspin and then the Cubal moves back towards us. And we can also stop the Cubal in place and we call it stop shot. And this means that we must hit the Cubal slightly below its center and apply enough speed to stop it in place after contact with the object ball. But of course spin means everything, we can play topspin, backspin, side spin, just everything. But we need to talk about English, and I mean the situation when we hit the Cubal on its side points, so in this case we give it side spin. Right English or left English, whatever, English means side spin. Playing with spin is a very characteristic thing in many sports. Players in sports such as football or tennis hit the ball with spin to be able to manipulate its path. So at this point we can ask a question. How does spin works and how we can manipulate Cubal's path using spin? Let's check it. If we hit the Cubal to the right, it spins with right rotation. And if we hit to the left, then it spins with left rotation. The same thing happens when we hit its upper or lower point. If we play topspin, the Cubal spins forward, and when we play low spin, it spins backward. But you must remember very important thing. If we play English with follow, then the Cubal after contact with the rail will go in the same direction as the given spin. The situation changes if we play draw shot with English. In this case, the Cubal played with right English will bounce to the left, and the Cubal played with left English will bounce to the right. Okay, it seems simple, but it is starting to be a little bit complicated, right? Okay, but now we need to dive a little bit deeper into the Cubal physics. Is it possible to do more? Of course it is possible, let's go! In this part of the video, we need to talk about deflection, swerve and spin-induced throw. Will be really interesting, trust me. So let's start with deflection, and this means that when we hit the Cubal on its side points, the Cubal deviates from its natural line and follows a slightly different path. So in this case, if we hit the Cubal with center spin on the rail, then it should come back to us with the same path. The situation changes if we apply right-hand English, because then the Cubal deflects to the left, and if we apply left-hand English, then it deflects to the right. It is getting scary, right? Okay, but at this moment I have to mention the speed of the shot, because it has a huge impact on deflection. The amount of speed we use when hitting the Cubal causes it to deviate more or less from its natural line. If in this situation I hit the Cubal with right-hand English and use low speed, we can see that it hits the object ball almost at its center point. However, if I use high speed, we can see that the Cubal deflects from its natural line and hit the object ball on its left side. Therefore now you can see how much impact the speed of the shot has on the level of deflection, and we must take this into account when playing with English. Okay, but every time when we use English, we encounter another factor called swerve. Swerve is the curved path of the Cubal after hitting with English, so you must always take this into account when making this type of shots. But wait a second, it would be too easy if I ended here. Crucial thing. The curve can have different levels and it depends on the shot speed and above all the elevation of the cue stick. And elevation is the most important here. This is very important because as you can see, if we hit the Cubal with English and use low speed and with low elevation of the cue stick, we can see how the Cubal initially slightly deviates from its natural line and then returns to its initial path and hits the object ball almost at its center point. The situation changes completely if we play the same ball with the same English, but we elevate our cue stick much more. If we hit the Cubal with an elevated cue stick, it rotates on a different surface, which makes its curve much larger and more visible. So in this case, the most important factor influencing the curve level is the elevation of the cue stick. And using this phenomenon, we can create a very original shot called a banana. Wait a second, banana? This means that we elevate our cue stick very high and try to avoid the obstacle to hit another ball on the table.
Magic.
But this is not all. Now we need to talk about the spin-induced throw. When we play shot with English, then this English pushes the object ball to the certain side. For example, if we apply right-hand English and we hit the cue ball with low speed, then we can see that we are hitting the object ball at its center point, but right spin pushes the object ball to the left and additionally transfers some opposite spin. Same situation is when we apply left-hand English, but this time this spin pushes object ball to the right. And this how spin pushes the object ball is clearly visible when we compare this type of shot with the one when I am hitting the cue ball with center ball. Okay, I know, this is so complicated and I'm sure that you hate me at this moment. But hang on, because now I will show you something amazing. You can use the spin-induced throw factor in specific situations to create different path of the object ball. And let's look at this situation where, as you can see, we need to play 4 ball, but 1 ball partially obscures the ability to hit it at its correct point. So in this case, we need to hit the cue ball with right-hand English to activate spin-induced throw factor, which in next step will push 4 ball slightly to the left, and we will be able to pot this ball. But now I will show you something really important. Let's look at the 3 types of shots, and in the first step we need to look closer at straight-in shots, and then we move to the cut shots. After that, we move to the final part where I will show you what happens when we are hitting the cue ball on the rail. The way the cue ball behaves under the amount of spin highly depends on the speed we use. When we are hitting the cue ball at its center and use natural speed and spin, then it's going naturally forward after contact with the object ball. And this is caused by natural forward rotation of the cue ball, which will push it forward after hitting the object ball. But if we take a closer look at the behavior of the cue ball when we use spin, we can clearly see how the cue ball after contact with the object ball rotates in place for a fraction of a second, and after that time it starts to move in the direction depending on the spin given. And this phenomenon will be much more visible if we hit the cue ball with a lot of spin and speed. The exception is in situation when we play a stop shot and the cue ball stops after contact with the object ball. When it hits the object ball, the cue ball has no spin and therefore stops. Actually, we have 2 more types of shots, and it is stun shot and drag shot. In the first one, our goal is to hit the cue ball slightly above the center and with high speed to move the cue ball slightly forward. The second one is a situation when we are hitting the cue ball with a lot of backspin, but speed of the shot is really low, and in this case cue ball spinning backward, and after a certain distance it stops spinning for a moment and immediately starts spinning forward. So the main conclusion is that we use spin to be able to manipulate the natural rotation of the cue ball. However, we must remember that in order to perform each type of shot correctly, we must use different amounts of spin and speed depending on the distance the cue ball must cover before it hits the object ball. Therefore, when the distance between the balls is small, we have to apply much less speed and spin than when the distance is much larger. And that was a situation where both balls were in straight line with the pocket, and now let's see what happens when we start increasing the angle. This time the behavior of the cue ball is completely different and highly depends on the speed of the shot. First of all, let's look how the cue ball will behave if we play a stop shot. Cue ball during contact with the object ball has no spin and follows the tangent line of this shot. The tangent line is perpendicular to a line drawn through the object ball and the cue ball at the point of contact. This is a 90-degree angle from the path of the object ball to the pocket. And you need to remember that the tangent line will be always the same if we change only position of the cue ball. The tangent line changes only in situation if we change the position of the object ball, because then line between this ball and pocket is placed different. And this is important to note that when we use spin on the cue ball, then it always will follow tangent line after hitting the object ball, but this how long it would take depends on what type of spin and speed we will use. And now it looks absolutely complicated, right? But let's go. As you can see, if we hit the cue ball with low speed and apply top spin, then it hits the long rail at some point. The time during which the cue ball followed the tangent line was very small and practically not visible to the human eye. Okay, but if we increase amount of speed, then we can see that the cue ball hits the long rail bit later than before. Additionally, we can see that the cue ball curved slightly and followed the tangent line more than before. But why is this happening? The main conclusion is that increased amount of speed will cause the cue ball to rotate more, and this means that it takes longer until the forward rotation will grab the glove. And the more speed we use, the larger calf will be. Okay, but let's do the same things, but this time using backspin. If we use low speed, then we can see again that the cue ball follows tangent line a very short time and hits rail in some point. And same like before, if we increase the speed of the shot, then the cue ball's path will change. Okay, but the question is, what will happen if we increase the angle and repeat every shot like before? Regardless of how much we increase the angle, the tangent line will always be the same, and the cue ball will follow the same path regardless of the speed of the shot. But the highest difference we can see on the follow and draw shots. Angle of the shot is much larger, so cue ball follows tangent line much longer than before, which result with completely different points of contact with the rails. And the last important thing which I need to show you in this episode is how we can manipulate path of the cue ball when hitting rail. Of course, if you hit the cue ball at its center point with low speed, then it follows the natural path because it has natural forward rotation. Situation changes if you apply topspin, because then we can see that cue ball, due to applied additional forward rotation, opens more angle and hits rail bit later. Same thing is when we apply low spin, but this time we can see that the cue ball wants to come back to us and hits rail bit earlier. And of course, if we are using English on the cue ball, then we can observe that the cue ball changes its path immediately after contacting the rail. And this knowledge is really helpful during calculating kick shots in pool. Oh, as you could see, I made a lot of work to prepare this video for you, and if you enjoyed it, then please consider leaving a thumbs up and share your opinion in the comments. And if you are not my subscriber yet, then this is a great moment to hit the subscribe button to be updated with videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next lesson. Take care. Ha!